And then most of them disappeared. You know, they had their own lives and their own things. And at 16, it was not fun to hang out with the girl with the baby, you know, and I can understand that.
Do you feel like you ever faced any societal judgment or discrimination or stigma during this time of your life?
Oh, it felt impossible. I ended up getting married and being pressured to withdraw from classes. And he was older and a little bit controlling, but it was to take my independence.
You mentioned your ex-husband fled the country. Now, the word fled is a pretty strong word. That usually insinuates that something is happening. What went on with that?
He had been arrested in Tuscaloosa County 14 years after the last thing we heard. I got a Facebook message from a lady in Canada asking me if I knew, and then his name. And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I do know a guy by that name. So do you know where he is? And they were like, well, if it's the same guy, he's here in Canada. She said, but he calls himself Brad here, and he's married, and he has 2 children. The name on their birth certificates is his fake identity. You know, I was told the same thing. No one's ever gonna want you.
Did you know more than half of teen moms never graduate from high school and less than 2% earn a college degree by age 30? But our next guest refused to become another statistic. At 17, she found herself unexpectedly pregnant, abandoned by friends, and navigating this new life on her own. She earned her GED and graduated from community college before her peers even finished high school. She then began to attend the University of Alabama with her son by her side. But during this time, feeling vulnerable in search for love and stability, she married a man who would later be revealed to be a predator, someone who is still at large today. Despite that trauma, she pressed on to complete her bachelor's degree and went on to earn a master's in counseling. She's a wife, a mother of 4, a high school counselor, and someone turning her own story into purpose and impact. Her journey is one of resilience, courage, and proof that you are enough, even when the world says otherwise. If this podcast moves you, here's how you can make a difference. First, consider joining us as a supporter. Just tap the link in our show notes for more information. Second, you can leave us a 5-star review. It's free and an easy way to make sure our voice is amplified to those in need. Without further ado, let's welcome Kari to Unplanned and Untold. Well, welcome to the podcast, Kari. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you.
I'm so excited to interview you. Now, normally I'm interviewing women who find out they're pregnant in college, and every now and again we get stories from women who find out they're pregnant earlier, and your story fits that bill. You got pregnant in high school, didn't you?
I did. So I found out that I was pregnant in the summer between my 10th and 11th grade year. I was late 16 years old.
Oh my gosh. So literally like the show, 16 and Pregnant. Have you ever watched?
Yes, and it's so different. I'm sure it's so scripted on those shows. It's not near as dramatic, I think, as it's led on to be on TV.
I mean, I remember when that show came out, I was pretty obsessed because you just never got to see into the day in the life of somebody at that age having an unplanned pregnancy. And so I can only imagine what it feels like in real life going through that at, oh my gosh, 16. Mm-hmm. So how did you find out you were pregnant?
Well, actually, my mom recognized the signs before I really understood what was going on. I mean, I was just a baby. I mean, she'd really not had any conversations with me, about how everything worked or birth control or anything like that. And so I was a majorette in high school. And during the summer, you start going for, uniforms and fittings and practices. And I think she just took a good look at me one day and went, oh my God, and took me straight to the doctor to be tested. And they did an ultrasound and showed me my baby boy.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember how far along you were during that ultrasound?
Well, that was in the summer, and my son was born in October.
Oh my goodness.
So we didn't have a lot of time to prepare.
No, that is a shock to the system. In that moment, was there tension between you and your mom, or what did that feel like with her there with you?
It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
My mom was a teacher.
Okay.
And she was one of those teachers that could walk into the room and frown.
Right.
And every student would sit down and be quiet. And, she was scary.
She had those eyes. I know the look.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it was not just that, but it was this cloud of disappointment, that you feel like you have derailed everyone's plans, including your own.
Right.
It's very intimidating and it's very scary, and it's heartbreaking also when you're in that moment.
And I think a lot of us who find out we were pregnant later on in life, we had some time to process it on our own and figure out a way to share this news. But with you are finding out in real time with your mom. I cannot imagine just the overload of emotions that comes from that experience. And how do you tell the rest of your family? What did that look like?
I don't think I had the opportunity to do that. I think she kind of took over, which really probably needed to happen. I was 16. Right. I didn't know. I had a younger brother and he was still in school. But she withdrew me from high school.
Okay.
And so, there was really never an opportunity that I needed to go and tell anyone else. And, it was like everyone already knew before I even had the chance to say anything. Now, I'm from a small town, and so it's one of those situations where, everybody knows everything sometimes before you even know. So that wasn't out of the ordinary for anything.
Right. And then I can only imagine friend group wise at 16. I mean, I lost a lot of friends and I was in my 20s. So what does that look like when you're 16 finding out you're pregnant?
It was really hard, especially since I didn't go back to high school. Some of my high school friends had a small baby shower, and brought some small gifts and things like that, the people I was closest to. And then most of them disappeared. They had their own lives and their own things. Right. And at 16, it was not fun to hang out with the girl with the baby, and I can understand that too. Looking back, I have one friend that I'm still close to out of that small group that still, comes and hangs out and bakes cookies for my children.
Stop it. This whole time you've hung on to that friendship.
Yes, I love that.
Such sweet memories. Lifetime. That's a lifetime friend. We need to protect her at all costs.
Absolutely, we do.
My goodness. So what did the relationship with the father of your child look like? I mean, at 16, I can only imagine it probably wasn't super serious. So how does that unfold?
Well, he was, because of the way the birthdays fell, he had just graduated from high school when we found out. And so I was going to enter the 11th grade at the time. And so even though he was really maybe a year older than me, he was 2 grade levels ahead of me. So he had already left high school and he was, hey, let's get married. And I mean, you don't resolve a problem by creating more problems.
Right.
And neither of us were ready for that. Yeah. But I think that was the moment that everything kind of fell apart with that relationship because, that wasn't where I was. That wasn't what I wanted. And, he did come and see our baby for a few months and then it really kind of slacked off. And I think my parents probably scared him to death. And it was intimidating to try to come and hold the baby sitting in front of them. And so, he eventually about 6 months later, really just never came back around.
Wow. That had to be so hard to navigate.
Absolutely.
So did you have dreams of going to college? Did this unplanned pregnancy wreck those dreams or, pause them? Or what did college look like for you?
Well, I was definitely always planning to go to college. I was a straight A student in high school. And so they were big dreams, of course. Mm-hmm. And so, it was, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to twirl in college. I'm going to do all these things. And, I maybe go to medical school. We don't know. We're going to do all the things. And children were the last thing on my mind. In fact, I had said a few times I'm not going to have any kids. I'm not interested in all that. So surprise, what the universe had in store for me. So, without going to high school, my mom knew that I was more than capable of more than going straight into work. And so she was very instrumental in helping me get started taking classes at our local community college. So I missed the fall semester, that my friends would have been in the 11th grade because of having the baby in October. But we had a neighbor who was a good friend who taught in the music program. And because I played an instrument and was in the band in high school, they invited me to try out for a scholarship and just come and play with the orchestra. You don't have to register for the class. Just come, sit in the class, play with us as long as you feel like playing, and then when the baby's born, whatever we need to do. So I was able to fill in some time and some places that my peer group lacked by joining that college level class, which is always interesting at 16 years old to join a college class. It's it's a whole different kind of peer group there.
Yes.
But interestingly enough, one of the young ladies that I sat next to in my section was also pregnant.
No way.
And so we were the two little mamas in that class.
Stop it.
So we had bonded just right then because we had known each other, even though we didn't go to the same high school, we had known each other through some, various band events and things like that around the county. So, I automatically had someone that I could just talk to, sit by, and that was probably the most welcoming group of students or people that I was around during that time, because it just wasn't a thing. It was like, baby, okay, cool. When are we going to have a baby?
Wow. Oh, I can't even imagine what that felt like. It takes that isolation and takes at least a couple bricks off of what you are carrying, knowing that somebody else is feeling that and you just don't feel completely alone.
Absolutely.
Wow. So what does it look like to transfer then to the University of Alabama?
So I actually graduated from a community college the semester. Well, it was actually 2 weeks before my high school class graduated from high school.
Oh my gosh.
I completed an associate's degree. And you're right. That was a lot of work.
Yes.
It was a lot to do between trying to take care of the baby, trying to go to school, and I held down a job at the same time, 3 days a week, because somebody had to pay for the things. I wasn't getting any financial support from the baby's father, and we weren't asking for any just because we didn't want to start that up. And so when I graduated there, I took the first semester, which was the summer semester, and my parents actually bought a house for me to stay in. And I started classes at UA just in the summer because it was less intense, to start just less people on campus. I was able to find a place for my son at the University Child Care Center that was in the old Rose Towers back, this was 25 years ago.
Wow.
And so he was able to stay in a child care center on campus. And everything was very convenient. In fact, I worked at a bank that before I moved, and when I moved to Tuscaloosa, I was actually just able to transfer to a different branch of the same bank. And so it really kind of fell into place to be able to move. But that first semester, when it was just me and him, was crazy because, you didn't know what to expect. And, as a new mom, every mom at any age, we don't feel like we're enough. We never feel like we're being the best mom that we could be. But when you add on, I'm working, I'm going to school, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm too young to do this. I want my friend group. I want my peer group. I don't have a partner to experience this with. I think that experience of, I'm not being the best mom that I can be is multiplied exponentially. Right. And so, but we made it. I read to him some nights out of my organic chemistry book.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
that would bore anybody to hears, really.
Put him right to sleep.
Put him right to
You have
sleep.
a
That's
mom
true.
hack right there.
I mean, if anybody wants to borrow an organic chemistry book, right? That's
Love it.
forget stories. This is the most boring thing ever.
Oh my goodness.
But we made it.
So what was it like juggling school, work, your baby, all pretty much by yourself?
Oh, it felt impossible every day. Every day is a struggle, but it's so worth that struggle. You feel like you can't be the mom that you need to be to your child. You feel like you can't keep up in your classes. Work was only 3 days a week. So thankfully that wasn't, something that would impede college classes or, it was always during the day. I was fortunate to have a job that didn't have, 9 hours. So, my son was able to stay in the child care on campus during that time too. But academics was always a struggle. And, one of the things 25 years ago that I experienced was, you would go to class and that was the posted time for the class.
Right.
And then they had mandatory study sessions or mandatory practices during the evening. And what do you do? Because there's not daycare assistants, at night. And so you have to go to your professors and you have to say, I can't come at night. I have a baby. And, that might be more flexible, 25 years later, students may have different experiences now, but it was always a struggle then. There were classes that you had to drop because you couldn't come to those mandatory practices. I was able to join a music class at UA. And that was one of the things I experienced there was, it's not posted that you have to have mandatory classes when you register, but you go to class and then there's sectionals and then there's whole group practices at night. And, that keeps you from being able to be in classes, that you just want to go to enjoy, and so you really have to just focus on what do I need to do to get this degree? What classes do I have to take? What are mandatory for my degree so that I can move on, so that I can graduate? And you miss out on computer labs and you miss out on library study sessions with groups and you miss out on office hours that are outside of daycare hours. And it's hard to get any extra study time or any extra support for those academics. And, that's why what you guys are doing with, having this group off campus that can, help and provide support to these moms is so valuable, because it's not just, oh, I need daycare, because there's state daycare assistants, it's more those little things that, I've got to take this test outside of class hours, or I have to do some makeup work and not being able to get those things done.
Absolutely. You just brought back so many memories, honestly, by talking about after hour things, because I remember group projects in college, the bane of my existence, especially if you have a child. And, it wasn't everybody's business. You got put in a group with people you didn't even know, forced to work on a project together. And I remember speaking with my professor about, having a child and there being limited ability to meet outside of class hours. And they didn't really budge. It was a group project, figure out when you can meet. But these were a bunch of peers that I didn't know, that I didn't feel comfortable saying, hey, by the way, I either can't make that time because I have a baby, or I'm going to be bringing my baby to the group project. So I remember one, I almost failed because I couldn't participate the way I wanted to.
Absolutely. And there were classes that I had to withdraw from and take different, sessions of, or with different professors that maybe required different things because of that very thing. And, it's really hard to get group work done when you've got a 2-year-old running around the room or whining or wanting to hold you or, bedtime is 8 o'clock, and everybody's waking up when they're in college around 8 o'clock.
They're just starting at 8 p.m. The study
That's right.
sessions don't start till like 9 or 10. It's totally different. Do you feel like you ever face any societal judgment or discrimination or stigma during this time of your life?
Oh, absolutely. Every day. Well, I mean, because of just simply scheduling activities, and that's not intentional. That's just when the activities are offered, right? But it's automatically prohibitive, But with peers, it also, like, we don't want to be in the group with you because you can't come. We don't want the baby around. And that's automatic as well, and unintentional, but still nobody wants that extra work. They've got enough on their plate, and I can understand that too.
Right. So what characteristics enabled you to push through these difficult times?
That's a hard question. So, I mean, I'm highly motivated, and I'm a type A, and I'm a perfectionist. And so there was nothing about the situation that I was in that was going to stop me from getting what I needed to be successful. And so as long as I had that support from, like, being able to only work a few days and had a little bit of financial help with housing, I was able to accomplish all of those classes. In fact, I made it through, I needed 2 semesters to graduate. And then I met someone, and it was a bad situation. And
Really?
right, because I was socially withdrawn from my other peers, and because I still didn't have the wherewithal with peer groups, because I was so young, to recognize things that people now call red flags.
Right.
I met someone, and he was pretty shady, and I didn't recognize that, and he made me feel like, hey, you're a mom. I also have a child. I'm a dad. So, and he was a little older, and he had been divorced. And so, it was really easy to fit into his peer group because they were families and, couples with children. And it really pulled me away from my age group. But then I didn't really have a strong connection with anyone in my age group at the time anyway. And so that was one of the hardest things, looking back now, because, I feel like if I'd had peers and support at my age, I wouldn't have fallen into this group of folks that were adults. And it's not that really they were doing anything wrong, but they were just so much further ahead of me, emotionally and developmentally. And so I ended up getting married and being pressured to withdraw from classes.
How old were you at this time? Were you
21.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty darn young.
Yeah.
So what was the time frame between y'all meeting and y'all getting married?
It was less than a year. And he was older and a little bit controlling, and wanted me to give him a lot of attention, and felt like I should be a mom. And less than a year after that, I was pregnant again and had my second son. And so that really, I say derails progress as far as education, but it's pretty common for women to get married, have kids, and drop out of school. Right. I see it all the time in my field of work. And so, it was always, well, you can go back later. But because I didn't have the life experience, I didn't recognize that for what it was. And, to get into a relationship like that, it's really easy when you don't have, an emotional maturity. When you are picked up from being 16 and placed in a life situation of a 25-year-old that you're not ready for, it makes it hard to make good decisions. And so that was one of those that was a little questionable. But at the time, I felt like, well, this is going to give my child a parent figure. It's going to give my child a sibling. And that's what my child deserves at this point in his life. He needs to have, that stability. And so I was craving that and just jumped right in feet first because I didn't know that it was not going to be that, if we could see the future. Right?
Sure. So his plans basically were, all right, I need to hurry up and marry her, and to kind of pressure you to drop school and to be a stay-at-home mom, or to raise the kids, focus on raising children. That's wild, knowing that everything you had to overcome to get into college and all that you were doing on your own to maintain staying in college. Now that you're removed from that situation, what red flags were going, like, do you wish, you would have seen that were going off at the time?
Well, a partner that loves you and supports you is going to encourage you to be your best at everything. And that includes being in school, graduating from college. Who wouldn't want a partner that is a year away from a college degree to finish that degree?
Oh my gosh.
And be a productive member of the household.
Right.
Right? Like that's what every partner should want for their other partner. But it was to take my independence.
Wow.
It's really hard to go back and look at that now.
Sure.
And because you have to say, how did I not see that? But, to other women who might be in a similar situation, somebody that's a real partner is not going to take things away from you. They're going to promote, how can I support you in doing the things that you need to do to be successful?
So you mentioned your ex-husband fled the country. Now, the word fled is a pretty strong word. So that usually insinuates that something is happening. What went on with that?
Well, it's an interesting story. He had been arrested in Tuscaloosa County for felony charges. There were 4 counts of theft of property. He owned a business in Tuscaloosa, and he was selling 49% of his business to various elderly couples around town for lots of money. And of course, he didn't actually have a business license or a business that was real. Wow. And so that's illegal. And so there were some felonies, and because this was 25 years ago and there was not, ready internet access to public records, it turns out he had a couple of prior felonies as well. And so he was arrested and let out on bail for some strange reason. And he was living with a friend of his because I had already left the house at that point. And he borrowed his friend's driver's license, went to the state of Mississippi, got his photo put onto his friend's driver's license, and then crossed the border into Canada.
Whoa. And you had no clue that this man was capable of these kind of things?
No. In fact, we had signed divorce papers, and this was in 2003, 2004 that we had signed divorce papers, and he had agreed to child support, but I had sole custody of both children. He had actually adopted my oldest child. Wow. At some point during our early in our marriage, he had contacted my son's father, and he had signed away his parental rights so that my son could be adopted. And so he legally adopted him, and so I had ended up with sole custody of both children. And I knew that he had moved to Mississippi because when the Department of Human Resources tries to get child support payments, they can track employment. And so he was working, and then they couldn't find employment for him. Looking back, now that I know that he had used a different identity, he was probably working under that name, and that's why there was no more employment data. And then he was gone.
How did you find out about him fleeing and just all the other details?
Well, strangely enough, in 2019, so, 14 years after the last thing we heard,
okay.
I got a Facebook message from a lady in Canada asking me if I knew, and then his name.
Right.
And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I do know a guy by that name. So do you know where he is? And they were like, well, if it's the same guy, he's here in Canada. Oh, okay, Canada. She said, but he calls himself Brad here, and he's married, and he has 2 children.
Oh my gosh.
And the name on their birth certificates is his fake identity. And so he had been with this woman, right? So he'd been with this woman for 8 years, and they had 2 children, and she thought his name was Brad. And so he was reported to be in the country illegally, and he was detained, and he was extradited back to Alabama. And so it's a pretty terrible situation because his children with her are young. My children are adults, and his child from his previous marriage was an adult. But I also learned that he had married again and had another son in between us. And so my kids have like 6 siblings.
My goodness, this man. Oh my word.
I know. So again, this goes back to not having the maturity level when you're a very young mother and on your own to be able to recognize situations. We hear more about these situations now than we did 20 years ago, because we see these shows on TV, and we see we listen to these podcasts, and we hear about these stories, but that didn't exist at the time. And so, we had no idea. So it's been a crazy ride. I've actually made friends with the mom in Canada, and our children have met each other.
Oh my gosh.
And you're right. And they love each other. They're wonderful together. They look exactly alike, which is crazy.
Wow. What a beautiful step, to reunite them with siblings, and to feel like that is a chapter that you can mend in a way. It's closed, but still being able to be a part of your current life is a beautiful thing.
Yes. Oh, and we absolutely love them. And I'm thrilled that something positive came out of my son not having access to a parent for those years. I mean, he has siblings that he loves dearly, and so it's been a positive thing for him.
And it could have turned out so much worse if y'all had stayed together longer. I actually can't imagine the mud you would have been dragged through at that point.
Oh, no, there was some abusive situations in our marriage, and they carried over into some of his other relationships, from what I understand from her, and also a couple of other women that have contacted me that he didn't marry but was in relationships with. And so it was the best thing to be removed completely from that situation.
So for all of our girls who are feeling like you are trying to find that piece, that you are missing, look out for those red flags that sometimes you are blinded. We're so eager to feel accepted and loved. And we feel, at least I felt a bit broken. Like I was willing to take scraps. What is somebody willing to give me? Because I was told you'll never get married. Nobody will ever adopt your child. Like this is not what you want for the rest of your life. And
I was told the same thing. Mm-hmm. No one's ever going to want you as is.
It sticks with you, and it stings. And I think it almost makes you wear those glasses where you can't see those red flags that are really all over the place. But thank goodness you were able to identify and get out of that situation as quickly as you possibly could, because now, he has created a heck of a mess after all of this.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, and the one person in that in your relationship that it's the most important is that little baby.
Yes.
That person loves you unconditionally. Mm-hmm. And that is the most important relationship to build and develop. And, to be with the wrong partner can really impact that relationship with your child. And it's not worth it. like the focusing on the child and focusing on raising him and doing everything that you need to do for him and being independent enough to be able to take care of yourself. That's more critical at any time than trying to, find a little bit of a relationship that's not healthy. You have to take care of you. They always tell you when you're on an airplane to put on your oxygen mask first. And it's like that, in relationships too. I mean, you got to take care of you. And only when you're the most healthy is when you're going to find the person that can be who you need.
That is some great advice right there. Great advice. I think after you have an unplanned pregnancy and you've learned to be independent, and you've learned to pick up all the pieces, there's always something inside of us women who want to be seen and loved and taken care of. Do you feel like, having faced all of those hurdles so young, that those feelings of just wanting to be loved and accepted and taken care of really blinded you to the man that was in front of you?
Absolutely. Every day, 100%. That is absolutely what happened.
So how does it all end up unraveling? How do you come to your senses and figure out this is actually a really bad situation for you to be in?
Well, there were lots of little things that built up, and we were probably married only for about 3 years before I left, and he also left, but left the state and then later left the country. And so thankfully, I've not had to have any contact, with him, and my second son does not have any contact with him either, and which has really been the best thing for that. But about a year after he left, I said, okay, it's done. I've got to finish that last year of college. And so I did. And so I finished the last 2 semesters that really, it took 3, but it was really just the last 2. But between taking a class here and there and 2 days a week and working, 3 or 4 days a week, we got it done. We got it accomplished. And so I graduated with a degree in psychology. Wow. And then about a year later, my mom said, this is great and all, but I will pay for you to go get your master's degree if you'll just go. Okay. And I said, well, deal. That's done. Let's do it. And so the University of Alabama offers a huge array of classes for master's programs that have a lot of online classes. Okay. And so I was able to complete a master's degree from UA in counseling, primarily online. And so that's what I do now. And so I'm able to work with young adults, high school age, college age students who are trying to plan that transition, trying to figure out, where am I going to school? How I'm going to go to school? How am I going to do this? What resources do I have available? And so that's really been the goal all along was to, identify people who needed support and support them. And that's what I feel like I do every day. And it's been so worth the journey, right, to have done all that. But it, I say derailed a lot. It really just changed the track a little bit. And so, I wouldn't give anything for my 2 precious boys. And I have gotten remarried, and now I have 2 precious girls to add to that. That's right. And so my son, who was born when I was 16, I'm going to give away my age, but he's 27.
Oh my word.
And he graduated from Auburn University a few years ago.
No,
I know. What did I do
wrong?
Are
you mortified? I'm so sorry, Mama, but attaboy.
That's right. And then my second oldest is in engineering at the University of Alabama.
Wow.
And so, right. And then I have a senior in high school.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're just chugging along every day.
Oh my goodness. My children aren't there yet at those milestones. And when I interview women who get to see the full circle moment from them to their children, it really brings chills, all over my body, because if you took yourself back to that moment that you found out you're pregnant at 16, did you ever fathom that not only would you be okay, you'd make it through high school, but that you would graduate from a prestigious university, go on to eventually marry, a really awesome man, raise 4 children together, and then have those children be so successful? Does that blow your mind looking back at things?
Absolutely. Never in a million years could I have even thought that far ahead.
Oh my goodness. It's so exciting to hear, because I hope it gives our listeners hope that when you see those 2 blue lines that you feel like are going to wreck your entire life and you start panicking, when you listen to these podcasts, it doesn't end up that way if we will only walk this out and be confident in who we are and our capabilities. I tell all of our guests, having that unplanned pregnancy really built me. Like, there are things that I would change along the way as I experienced that, but I wouldn't take that experience away from my life, because I really wouldn't be who I am today without it. It built a lot of the pieces in me that I don't think I would have built having not faced adversity. Do you feel like your unplanned pregnancy impacted your life, your line of work, and where you are today?
Absolutely. I'm never the same. I've never been the same person. I'm not the same person that I was 25 years ago, 27 years ago, even, of course. And, the pathway, and the dreams have changed a little. But you're absolutely right. It's building on, my experiences and seeing the needs in the community, and this strong desire now to be a support system for those who need things has really, directed my career pathway too. And so it's more about people than it is about advancing in a career, and I think that's what's really shaped all that determination and all that motivation for this, what I'm doing now, because of that one day, that one change that happened, that one track change, if you will.
Absolutely. So how did you end up hearing about Baby Steps? I'm so curious.
So I was actually just scrolling on Facebook, and I follow a lot of the University of Alabama, pages, and it just happened to pop up. And I think I was sitting outside on my porch just sobbing, and my husband came outside. I know I'm going to cry now. And he said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, if this had been around when I was in school. If I had just had that small group of people, the housing is great, the daycare support is great, but just somebody would have been great to have had. And I'm so thankful that y'all have been able to start this program in so many different places. It's so meaningful and it's so impactful, and it's going to impact so many lives. And I'm so grateful for what you guys do every day.
Well, it's an honor. And you even saying that brings tears to my eyes, because I just wish we were on every college campus at this point. I'm like, can we hurry this up? Because I know it takes time. We've got to slow it down. We have to do it right. You don't want to expand too quickly. But I know there are student moms, there are young women in college waking up today who will take a pregnancy test and find out she's pregnant and not have resources on her campus and feel like she's got to do this completely alone. And so I hope this podcast reaches those student moms and gives them hope that we might not be on your campus right now, but our goal is to get there. And for now, I hope stories like yours, Kari, are able to give them the hope that they need to keep pushing through, to focus on being the best mother and student they can be, and to know that there is light at the end of this tunnel.
Oh, so do I. Absolutely, so do I.
So if you could go back in time and you could talk to a 16-year-old Kari who's finding out she's pregnant, what advice would you give her?
That's such a hard question. I think the first thing to say is, hey, you're loved. I know that you feel like you've disappointed people. I know you feel like you don't know what you're doing. And I know you're scared to death. But you are loved, and you have people, and you are not alone. I think that's the first thing that these young women need to hear. It was the first thing that I needed to hear.
Yes.
And then you can do this. You know, there are so many opportunities, so many pathways. It does not have to be the traditional pathway. There are so many ways to meet that goal, to reach that goal. There are guides, there are people out there who want to see you be successful. Reach out to those people. Ask those people for help. Do not be intimidated, to say, hey, I need some help. I don't know which direction to take. I don't know what to do. I just need some advice. And build a community, find people, grow that community, and keep them close.
Yes.
No.
Oh, that's such beautiful advice. And I just want to thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable about your story and for giving hope to these young women who are listening. Your voices are powerful. The stories that have never been told before on this podcast are now getting a platform to be heard. And they are so incredibly powerful. And we hope to change the way that society and college campuses look at women experiencing unplanned pregnancies. And you're a part of that. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And for all of our listeners, we hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye.
Unplanned and Untold drops new episodes every other Wednesday. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star review if you love this episode. I'm Caitlin Willing, and this is Unplanned and Untold.